Welcome back, everybody, to Unconditional Surrender, the me, myself, and I playthrough of the main event scenario. Game is published by GMT Games, designed by Salvatore Vasta. There was a faux pas on my part in the last turn when we were doing replacements and mobilization. I didn't do the West at all. So I have gone along and click on this map here. I've taken the sorties off the American fleets like I should have. The only thing I did for the British is I took off 2 sorties on the bomber and on the convoy over here in Sicily. I took off 2, and then I bought the surprise attack marker, so it's coming back in August. That was my plan all along, and I just didn't bother to do the West. I don't know where my brain was, but I did the Germans and the Italians, and then I did the Russians, and then I ended the turn and said, I'm done, and never even thought to do the British. So I've corrected that, so just so you know what's going on. Let's begin with the weather. We are under the new weather rules. It's going to be May of 1943. May cannot have the same weather as April did. So when I'm rolling for weather, where's my chart? If you look in April, or in May, we're in May, so that doesn't matter. So it just depends on what I roll, and whatever I roll in May, the opposite, they all have only 2 choices. So if I roll fair in May, you know it's going to be poor in June, and vice versa. So just as a recap of what we're doing with the weather rules. And I am going to go and start my timer before I forget. Come on, timer, start. There we go. All right. So, for the cold zone, we roll a 1, which means it's going to be fair this turn in May. For the mild zone, we roll a 4, which is also going to be fair in May. And in the warm zone, we roll a 2, which is also fair in May. So that means in June, we're going to have poor weather in all those weather zones. That's the new rules, new optional rules that I'm testing with the weather rules and the guards rule. And then the last one, which you'll see here very shortly if I get around to attacking the Italians, is the last stand rule. I'm not sure if I agree with it or not, but I'm going to try it out and see. It's the last optional rule in the list. So haven't had a chance to use it because you have to be going to collapse if someone goes into your city, advances after combat into a city. If that's so, you can take a loss like if you were in a fort and stay in the city. We'll see if I get around to doing that with the Italians. That was weather. No one's going to declare war on this turn, much as I would like to. I don't have any invasion markers for the U.S. and the British, so there's no reason to declare on Vichy and give the Germans time to do something about it. The economy phase, just a quick look. The Germans are way up there. They got their factories down to 1 lost. So that 14 plus 3 from the economic reforms gives them 34 production points. Speaking of which, they are going to give... they're going to give up 2 of them. They're going to give 1 to the Italians. There we go. And 1 to the Hungarians. So they're going to start at 32 instead of 34. But I wanted you to see that the strategic warfare went their way really well. And we'll probably explain what I'm going to do in the strategic warfare as we come up. That's the economy phase. Strategic warfare. The Russians are at +2. Germans are at +1. If you look on the faction card, the Germans have 1 submarine. The British have an ultra marker. And the Russians have 2 partisans. So the Germans have to decide, they're at 1 now, so they probably want to save the submarines in case the Russians get lucky and knock a factory out of them. If they use it against the West, maybe they get the factory back. So when we get to combat commitment, the Germans say no. The Russians, knowing that it's clear weather, and they have partisans. Partisans are the way you break through with the Russians. A combination of partisans, assaults with heavy artillery, and tanks units on guards infantry units. That's how you generate enough pluses to actually be able to compete with the Germans. So they say no as well. So it's just a straight up die roll with our pluses. The Germans roll. A 3 plus 1 is a 4. The Russians roll. A 4 plus 2 is a 6. And you know what that means? A 4 to a 6. The Russians made a factory go. National tracks where we are. So the German factory loss marker, hello, goes up 1. So now, before we go on with the West, the Germans are at +3. The West is at +2. I don't think, no, I didn't get a bomber through last turn. Just had to make sure. We go back to the faction card. Now, obviously, the Germans, they have their sub. They might as well use it to get the factory back if they can. The British have to think long and hard about this. They could throw in the Ultra to try and mitigate that and, try and keep the Germans up at the 2 mark or get them up to a 3. But they also have a chance down here because it's fair weather. It's not a very good chance. But the British are +3, +2 with an aircraft if the Americans cancel out the Italian aircraft. They could be a +2 to a +2 going across the toe. If they save their Ultra marker, they could be +3. Since it's not the greatest chance in the world and the economy is, I haven't been able to get my bombers through, so I really think from the Western Allied point of view that they almost have to play the Ultra marker to try and cut down the Germans getting that factory back. So we go to combat commitment. The Germans are definitely throwing in their sub because they want to get the factory back, and the British throw in their Ultra to try and stop that. So our die rolls are halved. The Germans roll 3 plus 3 is 6, halved down to a 3. Germans have a 3. And the British roll a 5 plus 2 is a 7, halved down to 3.5, rounds up to a 4. A 3 to a 4 is a diamond. Need to get a little bit better with the British. Didn't quite get there. So we both, not that card, this card. We both get our factories down to the 1 box. So the Germans will have their 34 again next turn, and the British will have 30, I think. Unless I think they may get a Lend-Lease too, so they might be up to 32. So wasn't the desired result, but it wasn't all that bad either. The Germans will roll for their sub of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Coming back in September. And the British roll for their Ultra a 5. Back to my 5s again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'll be back in October. Okay, that's strategic warfare. Strategic movement. The Germans have it out there somewhere. There it is. So, we definitely want to get it off this guy. Hello. Put it back in their box. I don't see a place to use the German strategic movement. This Panzer, you might think, well, move that Panzer up or something, but I want the Panzer to go in 3111 so that it kind of helps guard the beaches here in the center of occupied France. And I can only get there by moving because I have to stay on rail lines if I do strategic movement. So I don't really see a strategic movement for the Germans, so I'm going to go on. The British do have one down here. They need to take this marker off. Go one to there. And I think why is that Axis? That's not supposed to be Axis. That's supposed to be Allied. Let's make that what it's supposed to be. The Americans went in there a long time ago. I must have moved in there and not realized I didn't flip the counter over. There's not more than one there, is there? No. Okay. So, my thoughts are I could move this airplane over to Casablanca for future, lift back to England or whatever. But I'm not sure if I might not need it to play games here against Italy, so I think I'm going to leave it alone for right now. So I don't have one with the British. Soviets, the only thing I can think of to do with the Soviets would be to try and save an airplane, because they're all at really high sorties. The Germans will probably just negate my Air Force, but it should also run up their sorties on some of their airplanes as well. I'm not going to get off any decent attack in the north, or even at Rezev, probably. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I don't see really good attacks here. The question is do you strategically redeploy an airplane back and build it up? It's going to be a lot of clear weather turns, so if I leave the airplanes up here, at least the Germans use up some of their sorties to negate mine. So we're going to say none for the Russians either. And we're into German operations phase. Oh boy. It is fair weather, so I have a definite advantage on him in the airplane mark. Marking his airplanes and stuff. Problem is, it's fair weather, and those Russians are looking a lot stronger than they used to. But we'll go ahead and try it. Here it's, I'm +2 to start off with the German, and then I'm -3 for sorties. He starts off at -4 for sorties. Best he can get's a 2. The Germans roll. A 3 -1 is a 2. Best he can get's a 2, so that's 1 sortie each down here in the south. And that means if the Germans want to negate that airplane, they'll only have 1 sortie left. So they're going to go ahead and do it. Can't have the Russians adding +2 to combats. They're already nasty enough with their tanks markers. We're going to go ahead and use the Bryansk one against the one in Moscow. Ooh, I can't do that. I have to use it against Kalinin. So it's the same thing, -1 to -4. And the Germans roll a 2, -1. Okay, so that's 1 for 1 there. Let me see if I can get better here. This one would be at 0, and he would be at -2. So we're going to go after the guy in this junction box here. 2557, I think it is. The Germans roll a 4, and the Russians are at -2, but they roll a 6. So a 4 to a 4 is 1 each. Hello? And so now I'm -1 and he's -3. We'll go there again. It's not working out the way I wanted it to. 3 -1 is a 2, so again, that's 1 each. Let's try Bryansk against Moscow. I am a net of -2 and he's -4. See what happens here. 2, so that's 1 each. And then we'll go against the guy in the junction from the guy in Orel. Again, -2 to -4. -2 is a 3, because I rolled a 5. So I have a 3 with the Germans. He rolled a 3, so I did get a 2 for 1 there. So I got a 2 for 1 there. And then each of these can take 1 sortie to get these 2 planes. And then I have a -1 to a -4, so I'm actually a net +1. Because I'm +2 for German, -1 for sorties, and he's -4, so hopefully I'll get that airplane. 4 + 1 is a 5. Best he can get's a 2, that's a 2 for 1. So now the real question is do I spend a sortie to move Veliluki like up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could go all the way to Rezev, and that way I would kind of cover the center here with a couple 3 sorties. The southern line is kind of covered one time with a sortie, so I have to pick and choose when I play my sorties. Boy, I think I need to move the German airplane up, so it's going to fly up to vsav and take a sortie because I see some shenanigans here around Tula and stuff that I need to try and stop. Don't know if I'll be able to because he can do mobile attacks like again and again and again, and he can't do anything about it. So, okay, that's that part. I have 32. I've got 12. Probably this guy 15. I won't need to do this airplane until I'm ready to move it again, so I'm going to be able to leave it in low supply. So 15 is the minimum I probably need to keep. 16, because I need to flip this guy down here. And check my faction card, 17. Want to keep at least 17 because I want to build that garrison unit so I can help, maybe have it help defend someplace. Probably in Italy. Ground units to do anything with. There really isn't a good attack at this point. I could try to play games with my line. I could get out of this city, go behind a river, but river city, it's the same thing. If I go behind the river, you could get a 2-hex attack on the Romanian. Attack it twice from 2 different directions, possibly get blow it up and run Russians around back here where the problem is if the Russians can force some kind of breakthrough and then can run like a guards unit all the way to Kursk or Kharkov, he'll be in supply. I might be able to isolate him, but then I have to break the line to isolate him and kill him. Russians don't really care about willpower anymore because they can't be collapsed. So, if you can force a breakthrough someplace and just run something to go capture cities, they're rail lines and the Germans have to go back and kill them because otherwise they won't be in supply themselves. So, that's what I have to watch out for. And the Iranians, of course, cannot be helped by any airplanes from the Germans. I'm just trying to see if there's some good place to do defensing. And I'm pretty much there. I don't see any better defensive. Well, the garrison unit could be a problem. I can always throw the tanks marker on him. He can come at me with like a +3, and I would be airplane and maybe a tanks mark on the second round. That 7th garrison kind of is a weak point. Like I said, I really don't have the German infantry or ground units in general to hold this long a line. The idea here for the Germans is to slow the Russians down as much as I possibly can, and then retreat, and then slow them down again and retreat. And my goal is to not be past the Dnieper by the end of 1943. If I can be along the Dnieper up to like through Velik Luki and the Duna and stuff like that, if I can be holding that kind of a line at the end of 43, then he'll push me a little bit, maybe break the river. But then in 44, when he gets his clear weather and stuff, I'll be able to fall back on the woods around Brest, the woods in Prussia. There are a couple, there's a partial river line with Duna and the woods outside of Minsk, which can be sort of a line in the north. In the south, you kind of have to fall back to the Dniester and the Bug and Lvov. But if he's attacking there in the summer of 44, that means I can probably delay him from getting into Germany proper, except maybe parts of like Poland. He might take Hungary. If he's doing really well, he'll get all the way to Budapest and take out the Romanians along the way. But if I keep him out of Germany proper until sometime in late 44, when the weather turns and we get into really bad weather, then he only has like 3 clear weather turns come 1945 to try and take a whole lot of cities And hopefully I haven't lost a lot of German ground units. If he kills a lot of German ground units, he'll be able to run a lot of territory. So it's going to come down to some die rolls. In my current game, they haven't been too favorable for the Russians. Anytime he really wants something to happen, he rolls a 1 or a 2. When he rolls a 5 or a 6, the Germans tend to roll up like a 4, 5, or 6 right along with him, so things don't move very much. He did have one breakthrough, but it was, contained. So I think I'm done with the Germans. The Italians. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have to stay there, and the Americans are going to just pound me into the dirt, as they like to do. They just beat me up, but I have to stay there to make them use up some sorties. And I really don't have any real Italian moves at this point. Once I see surprise attack markers on him, then I might have to shift some units around. But right now I don't have to worry about those. So, I have to do supply. This guy is going to take a sortie to supply the Albanian. The Germans are going to go ahead and put a low supply marker on this guy, because he can draw supply out of Oslo, and for right now, that's good enough. That's it. Oh, no, I know what I was going to do with the Germans. I was going to spend 2 points to do this. 1, 2, 3. Get my armored unit where it belongs. There we go. That was my one move of the turn. To take 2 points off the Axis faction card. Not that card. Off the national tracks. That takes me down to 30. I only need 17. Even if I save 20, I still could move like 10 units around. I'm trying to see if there's anything I can do. Like I said, I don't really want to move anything in Russia. I was going to move the Hungarians. What was I going to do? I was going to put this guy in front of Kharkov. And move this guy into Slozna. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to move him up to this mountain hex in Hungary. He can't leave Hungary, but he can go there. That uses up the 2 Hungarian points. I think the Swedes are all in the right place, as best they can be for now. Don't need to move them. Don't really have any moves with the Finns. They're defending as best as they can. I have a whole lot of points that I can't really use. I don't see 10 ground movement points, ground moves that make any sense. I mean, the only thing I could think of to do would be to somehow swap the 7th garrison out and try to thin the line up here and move an infantry unit into his slot. I just don't think that that's... Well, I could take him out of the line so at least he doesn't get attacked. So I think I'll move him out of the line. Yeah, I'll go put him there. So there's another point. Like I said, I really don't have movement points for the Germans to use up that I can think of. I guess I could have played my surprise attack marker and tried to pound some Russians, but I don't think that's going to work real well. They're all +1s, +2s if they throw in armor. I'm not going to push his armor around because they're +2s. Shocks are +2s. Guards are all +1, and most of them are behind rivers. I just don't see good attacks. I don't see any reason to waste time doing it. So I'm going to stop here. I've only got maybe 5 minutes left. and I've done my supply, so I think I'm going to call this the Axis operations turn. Like I said, I just don't see anything for the Axis to do. So let's stop the video here. This was the beginning turn phases and the Axis operations phase. If you like the videos you're seeing, please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. I'm Dren608. I will be back shortly with the Western May 1943 clear weather turn. And depending on how long it takes me to do that, I might go right on into the Soviets. So we'll see you in a little bit. Bye-bye.